Viltrumites are weak.
No!
Whenever a new season of Invincible comes out, I always catch myself seeing posts from people arguing about who would be stronger, Kryptonians, Saiyans, or Viltrumites. And that is when I am not seeing even more ridiculous posts saying that Thragg would crush Superman or something like that. Of course, most of these posts exist just to farm engagement through outrage, but I honestly would not be surprised if there are people who actually think that way. But right at the start of this video, I am going to make one thing very clear, something that should be obvious. Viltrumites are extremely weak. Of course, inside the Invincible Universe, they are by far the most powerful race, especially before the Scourge virus. But if you throw any member of the species into the wider multiverse, they would be completely obliterated. Sure, a Viltrumite would still be tens of thousands of times stronger than a human, and in most universes would easily be top tier, but the comparison here is not with humans. The comparison is with the main alien races in fiction, especially those that resemble Superman, even if that is not always the rule. But before talking about the other races, we need to know a little more about the powers and maximum capabilities of a Viltrumite, and for that I am going to use Mark and Thragg as the standard. Both characters reach the top of the power scale in the series, so I am not even using the average, but the very peak of the race. A Viltrumite's power is rooted in the structure of their cells, made up of the so-called smart atoms, which give them an elite biology built for combat and conquest. The most obvious trait is super strength, which allows them to lift hundreds of tons and throw punches capable of devastating entire cities or piercing the bodies of extremely durable beings. Mark, long before reaching the top of the species, was already able to lift tons and held up massive transatlantic ships above his head. Omni-Man, in turn, once diverted an asteroid the size of Texas from colliding with Earth, and Thragg was so strong that he physically humiliated both of them. To complement that, they possess superhuman durability. Their skin and muscle tissue are so dense that conventional weapons like bullets or missiles do not damage them, and it takes impacts on a planetary scale to truly injure them. Mark and Thragg together already entered the outer layers of the sun and were holding up just fine while fighting there, even enduring battle inside the star's core. Another crucial factor is their accelerated healing and extreme longevity. While they do not instantly regenerate lost limbs, they can survive visceral wounds and keep fighting, and they live for thousands of years while growing stronger as they age. Even so, they have three lethal weaknesses: blows to the heart, blows to the brain, and lack of oxygen. In terms of mobility, Viltrumites can fly at extremely high speed, allowing them to operate both in ground combat and interstellar travel. This ability is tied to their perfect balance, controlled by a complex system in the inner ear that lets them move in any direction without becoming disoriented. They also have minimal vulnerability to the vacuum of space, being able to hold their breath for weeks, which allows them to travel between solar systems without the need for ships. Finally, their most dangerous genetic trait is the purity of their DNA, which ensures that when they reproduce with other species, Viltrumite biology almost completely dominates the descendants' genetic code. Out of all the feats of the race, the craziest one was definitely flying through the planet Viltrum with the help of the gun that can pierce anything. Of course, that feat involved strength, speed, and durability all at once, and it required all three of those factors so that Thadeus, Mark, and Omni-Man would not die during the crossing. But with all that power, would the race stand any chance against the other races mentioned here? Well, that is what we are going to see in today's video. As for the Saiyans, I need to be honest and say that Viltrumites are far faster and physically stronger than an average member of that race. Remember, Goku and Vegeta, with divine levels of power capable of destroying galaxies, are exceptions. Most of the race is much closer to the levels seen in Bardock Special and the beginning of the Saiyan saga, and that is what I am going to work with. A Saiyan's power comes from their nature as a warrior race, biologically adapted for constant combat and pushing beyond their limits. They also have super strength, super speed, and other superhuman traits, both because of their biology and their control of ki. But what truly sets them apart is the presence of a tail, which allows them to transform into a giant ape under the full moon. And if we start with the weakest known member of the race, which is Raditz, we can already see how humiliating the difference in power is between one race and the other. Yes, Viltrumites are faster and physically stronger, but they would hardly survive the first attack from any Saiyan. At the start of the saga, Piccolo was already powerful enough to completely destroy the moon after seeing Gohan transform into a giant ape. Keep in mind that Master Roshi had already done that before, and he was much weaker than Piccolo at that stage. That same Piccolo fired a direct attack at Raditz at the beginning of the saga, and the villain did not even move when he took the hit. Weaker characters, like Master Roshi as already mentioned, were already capable of destroying mountains, and Raditz, often mocked for being weak, could casually unleash an attack that could virtually destroy the moon. Nappa, in turn, was already so strong that by merely raising his ki, he could wipe out an entire city and also prevent the Z fighters from moving freely in battle. And once you put Vegeta into the equation, everything becomes even more humiliating. The Prince of the Saiyans, while fighting Goku, made the entire planet tremble just by raising his internal energy. He was vastly stronger than the others, to the point that Goku needed to use the Kaioken ×3 even after having humiliated Nappa. And all of this is before I even mention the Great Ape form, which increases a Saiyan's power by 10 times. If Raditz, who was a low-class warrior, would already be a huge problem, imagine hundreds of thousands of Saiyans against the Viltrumites all at once, while also being able to transform into Uzaru whenever they want, since they had a method of creating a artificial moon. Even though Dragon Ball has a very serious problem when it comes to visually representing destruction during its battles, it is a fact that they are more than capable of destroying entire worlds. That is why I see absolutely no chance for any Viltrumite here. But moving on, things only get worse. Kryptonians under a yellow sun become practically gods. In fact, Superman regularly fights actual gods. An empowered Kryptonian has powers like super strength, super speed, healing factor, heat vision, invulnerability, freeze breath, and several other abilities that are not as relevant here. And in this case, I cannot even say that Viltrumites win in strength or speed, because that simply is not true. Post-crisis Superman, who complained about having become weaker, was still capable of moving entire continents by himself. The new 52 Superman, who is also weaker than more traditional versions, held up the weight of the Earth for 5 straight days without receiving sunlight, which is what normally empowers him. That same version was also able to drag Brainiac's ship away alongside Martian Manhunter, and that ship was twice the size of Earth. And here I am being very generous by using more modest versions of the Man of Steel. If we look at the classic versions, things get even worse. Superman has already held in his arms a miniature galaxy that was expanding inside Metropolis. His speed is so absurd that he frequently travels faster than light. And when trying to save his father, Jonathan Kent, he traveled attoseconds, which is far beyond light speed. His heat vision is so insane that he has some very impressive feats of tearing through dimensions with it, and he has also replicated the heat of the sun and warmed the entire Earth. All this while remembering that Superman is known for always holding back and rarely allowing himself to fight at full power. Now, you could say that using Superman is unfair, since he has had decades to absorb solar energy, and I would agree with that. But even the few examples we have of newly empowered Kryptonians already show that they are ridiculously powerful. Superboy Prime, who was completely exhausted during the Sinestro Corps War, changed the entire course of the battle against the Green Lanterns and the Justice League after receiving sunlight. In that same comic, Sodom Yat, who is a Daxamite, a cousin race to Kryptonians, had also just awakened his powers and fought Superboy Prime physically on equal terms. And if that still is not enough for you, Supergirl, when she had just arrived on Earth, was described by Superman himself as being capable of destroying the entire island of the Amazons. And that was after only a few days of using her powers and absorbing sunlight. The only way an average Viltrumite would stand a chance against a Kryptonian is near a red sun or with a colossal block of kryptonite nearby. And the moment they get close to yellow sunlight, the fight already starts to even out. And as time goes on, it becomes more and more one-sided in favor of the Kryptonians, because they would be constantly growing stronger. Remember, Viltrumites also get stronger as they age, so it would not be very fair to use a Kryptonian who has just unlocked their powers or does not have them at all. A balanced matchup would be something like Omni-Man against Supergirl, or characters on that level, but even then, the disadvantage for the conquering race is enormous. And finally, the race that I believe is the most powerful among everyone on this list, ignoring Goku and Vegeta because they reach their levels through factors beyond the race itself, are the Martians. They are basically the Swiss Army knives of superhero fiction, with an arsenal of abilities that makes them versatile in any situation. If you think Superman is an endless pit of superpowers, it is only because you have not stopped to look at Martian Manhunter's powers. The most famous one is telepathy, which allows him to read minds, project thoughts, create illusions, and even erase memories or mentally paralyze opponents. Alongside that, they also have shapeshifting, allowing them to turn their bodies into any person, animal, or monstrous creature, and they can also increase their size or stretch their limbs like rubber. This physical manipulation leads to two other abilities: intangibility, which is the power to pass through walls or let attacks go through them harmlessly, and invisibility, which makes them undetectable to the naked eye. In direct combat, they are no less dangerous, possessing super strength that rivals one of the greatest heroes in the galaxy, as well as super speed, flight, and absurd durability, being capable of regenerating lost limbs or severe injuries in moments. To complete the package, Martians have super sharp senses and Martian vision, which allows them to fire energy blasts from their eyes and see through objects or across different spectrums such as infrared. With all of that said, it is virtually impossible for any Viltrumite to defeat a Martian on neutral ground, and honestly, this is not even open for debate. There are so many ways a Martian could defeat them that I would need an entire video just to cover that. Martian Manhunter, for example, has telepathy so absurd that it is not unreasonable at all to say he alone could take down all Viltrumites at the height of the race. In other words, he alone could shut down or completely destroy millions of Viltrumites at once. And even if he only wanted to defend himself and let the Viltrumites attack first, he could simply avoid all their blows through intangibility. His shapeshifting also allows him to become gigantic, fighting multiple enemies at once without major trouble. Not to mention that he is yet another character with super speed, even if that power is often overshadowed by all the others he has. His Martian vision is so powerful that in many moments it rivals Superman's heat vision, and so on. And all of this is only talking about a single Martian, using Martian Manhunter as the example. If we used all Martians, or even just a fraction of the species at its peak, they would be more than capable of defeating the Viltrumites completely. Of course, Martians do have a weakness that is very easy to exploit, which is their irrational fear of fire, placed in them by the Guardians of the Universe. But first, if they were on neutral ground, like in space for example, there would be no way to use fire. Second, Viltrumites do not know about that weakness, so it is not something they could exploit easily. That alone puts Martians far above Viltrumites in power, and that is assuming none of them survives the fire if a Viltrumite somehow uses it. Because if they do, then they can reach the burning Martian form used by Martian Manhunter, the same form that was able to solo the entire Justice League with extreme ease, which would make things much worse for the Viltrumites. So even though Viltrumites are extremely powerful and represent the peak of power in Invincible, outside their own universe, they are really not that impressive, as we can clearly see. And that is exactly how I am ending today's video. If you enjoyed it, you already know what to do. Leave a like below. Tell me in the comments which of these races is your favorite and which one you think is the strongest. Send this to that friend of yours who does not understand anything about Invincible, Marvel, or DC, and help the channel keep growing.